She's just so driven, so complicated, so difficult to like in lots of ways. You know, the things that she does, you feel like you shouldn't like her, but I completely fell in love with her. I thought she was amazing and completely of her time and just a remarkable woman. And I felt like I wanted to see her on screen, and that's a good a reason as any to write a script.
Can each of you talk about how your relationship to this project, how you got involved, and what was it about this particular story that really drove you?
Well, I think it's only fair to say, because so many people who made the film are here, that we should reference it, we should mention them. I mean, it began when I started working with Giles Smart, who was sitting over there somewhere, and he took me on. Thank you. Yeah, please, a round of applause. Absolutely, this is the genesis. I mean, and he represented Alice as well, and so he brought us together. I mean, I read some scripts of the people that Giles represents, and the script that stood out for me was Alice's work. And Alice presented me the book, and she said, there's this book, Lady Macbeth of Matensk. I heard of the opera, but I didn't know much more than that, so I read the book, and she said, what about this as a screenplay? And we're like, terrific, yeah, that's great. And at the same time that was happening, Fred Armesto, who is also here tonight. Where are you, Fred? Yeah, round of applause. Because he sent me an email and said, oh, there's this great producer called Fodhla who you should meet. And so we went and we had a cup of tea and watched 12 Years a Slave together, which was a great icebreaker. And that was the sort of the beginning for the three of us. And then really from the beginning we just worked, we had the book, and then Fodhla said, you may need to write a treatment, and we said, what's a treatment? And then basically you guided us through that, didn't you? And then we had that, and we then applied to iFeatures, who are all here tonight, and thank you very much, iFeatures.
But Alice, what in this story really
I mean, I'd read the book a long time ago when I was at university, and it had just stayed with me. I thought it was remarkable. Mainly because of this central character, Katerina, she's called in the book. She's just so driven, so complicated, so difficult to like in lots of ways. You know, the things that she does, you feel like you shouldn't like her, but I completely fell in love with her. I thought she was amazing and completely of her time and just a remarkable woman. And I felt like I wanted to see her on screen. And that's a good a reason as any to write a script. But yeah, we worked really closely together, the three of us, and then with the brilliant cast.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm a bit overwhelmed by this, but I wanted to do it because of, yes, I was totally drawn to the story, and especially Katerina, who was just this. The most uncompromising protagonist I had ever read, and so I was really excited about that, and I really wanted to develop a story with that character. But also I was just so excited to work with Will and Alice, and I felt as if we had a true kind of connection in the sort of film we wanted to make, and we stayed true to that throughout. And also I was totally up for the challenge of making a period drama on this size budget. And so I said yes to that, for sure.
Right. And Florence, both questions really, what drew you to the story, and also you're working with first-time feature filmmakers, but also quite experienced in the world of theatre. Did you feel you had that trust with them as an actor instantly, so that you could sort of take a leap and give this amazingly intimate and powerful performance?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a huge part of my decision on doing this film was down to the script. You read halfway and you go, yep, okay, I'll do it. And you'd be mad not to. To play a female lead that just grabs life by the horns and doesn't really give a damn about who tells her what to do or whether it's a man or a woman. She just goes, yeah, I want him. And so be it. And so I would have been stupid to turn the role down. That's really what inspired me. Also the challenge. You know, she's an incredibly complex woman. She has to meet all these points throughout the film where she has to go from a child to a killing, killing grown woman. And that, as an actor, is incredibly appealing because it's a challenge. And if you can't do it, then you hope no one else can.
Naomi and Cosmo, what was it about these characters that made you feel like you really wanted to play them?
I just sort of liked Sebastian, just
That's good.
because he was kind of just normal. Yeah, just I like dialogue mostly, but just like.
But then we cut it.
Yeah. And that's me finished talking. This is Naomi Ackie.
I think I was attracted to the challenge of playing a character that doesn't say much but says a lot. You know, it felt like I could push myself. It's a good balance between like having enough in common with the character, but also having enough to push yourself artistically, and also period drama, because who doesn't want to wear a corset for 12 hours? Yeah.
Yeah, Alice, congratulations. The script is terrific, and I think the fact that each of these characters has such a sort of rich arc, and they individually go through such a profound shift in the screenplay is such an achievement. So well done on that.
That's a good question. So the book originally, I mean, it's set in Russia, and there's a remarkable third act where Catherine doesn't get away with it, and she and Sebastian sort of end up in this penal colony, walking across Siberia, and then you meet this whole other range of characters as well. And there was a version where we tried to mimic that in Northumberland, which is tricky. So there were kind of practical reasons, and sort of doing some research into what British legal situations were then made that pretty difficult. But also, I mean, there was a brilliant note from Christopher, from one of our producers, who felt like, wouldn't it be an incredible feminist act to maybe tell a different story, to give her the potential to have another life another story, and you don't quite know what she's going to do at the end of it, and that really appealed. But we did go through lots of different versions of what the ending might be. That was certainly one of the big problems. But I know that at the end of the film, there's a bit of me that feels quite satisfied that she's got away with it.
I
it
like
feels
the
surprising.
ending too.
Good.
Two reasons. I mean, I knew that area. I knew the northeast of England because I'd studied there for a few years, and so I knew that I liked the area, I liked the people there, and I thought it would be a good place to go make a film. And then, secondly, you have to think where can we go that sort of maybe there are parts of it that sort of feel like they haven't changed for 150 years. Like if you go to the Northumberland Moors or the North Pennines, these sorts of places, it is pretty much the same. I mean, maybe there are people here who have travelled down today from the northeast who would disagree, but it's sort of, it feels like you could make a period drama there, and actually you don't need to sort of airbrush out factories and wind turbines and so on. It was, it felt like, because Siberia was such a large part of that story, where could you go that sort of had something which, it was also because she's so isolated, and that we needed a place that sort of felt like it was isolated as well. And, so we know that there are large parts of the Northumberland National Park and the North Pennines and so on that feel like that. So it had that sort of, that tonal requirement that we, so that's the answer. Well, Ari's here. Ari Wegner, where are you? Yes, hand up. So Ari's cinematographer. Ari is originally from Melbourne, so we spent a long time on Skype in the first phase, just talking about, well, we obviously worked from the script, but there was a real logic, wasn't there? We sort of developed this idea that actually there's two things. One, we've got to objectify Catherine, because so many of the men do that anyway in the story. And then we also have to get inside her head, and we have to see the story from her point of view. But how do you do those two things? How do you know, this was for me coming from theatre, I didn't have to worry about that, because normally you just set up the scene and then let the audience self-edit. You know, they can choose where to look. So I really relied on Ari to help me get into this. And so we sort of said, you know, this sort of locked off static shot was very useful in terms of, you know, being something which is very formal, especially when the men are in the house. And then as she starts to sort of, there's the awakening, and she starts to feel something, then the camera would start to move with her. And we would start to, you know, find a way of bringing it into the handheld part of the film. And then actually, as the men return, we would try and restore that sort of order with the sort of static locked-off shot. But it wouldn't be an easy fit. There would be now something we know that's inside her that wants to move, and so there would be a tension. And that was the sort of idea behind that. That was at least what we were trying. Is that right, Ari? Yeah. Please say yes. Yeah. So that was the idea, and then obviously, by the end, you're sort of in a right muddle, because you think, well, does Teddy represent the sort of, he's a young man, is he then part of the order, or is actually there's something now which is that she finds life with him because she can relate to him and so on. So it became something which is very different. Two more shout-outs. We've got Ben Baird here. Raise your hand, Ben. Ben is the sound designer. There he is, in the lovely red jumper. And Nick Emerson, where are you, Nick? He was our editor, fantastic editor. I don't know whether Dan Jones is here, but Dan was also one of the sound designers. I don't think Dan made it from Bristol, but anyway. But what can I say? I mean, really, I think we always started from there was always in the budget, wasn't there, the money to pay a composer if we needed music. And we had many conversations, but I always felt like we needed to start from a position of thinking, if we can get the performance, if we can get it right in terms of performance and in terms of the cut, if we can get the sense of the emotional connection and the tone right and the tension, then maybe we would try not to use music, you know. And actually, we would just, in the end, we used like one piece 3 times just to accent something. But it was always like an experiment for us, really, to sort of see whether we could do it through performance, you know, not rely on anything which would sort of encourage you to, you know, succumb to a particular mood, or, you know, feel like you were being sort of told what to feel. You know, that was always the intention. The edit was great because you can really change performance. Not that you need to.
Whoa!
Not that you need to.
Okay.
It's funny, but I just want to say, I'll hand over to you. I'll just say one thing, which is that in theatre, it really thrills me to go and see a play and not know what's going to come in the evening. I mean, for some people that's terrifying, and they would rather it didn't happen. They would rather each night was the same. But for me, I like that element of it being like a team sport. You sit there and you think, but also, it means that you don't have so much responsibility, because if it doesn't really work that night, then you can say, well, they had a funny night, and we'll note it, and tomorrow it will be better, and so on. You know, so actually coming forward with a film and thinking you're going to be judged because every decision is down to you ultimately. I mean, that's a sort of terrifying thing. But you know, the edit was great because I realised during it that actually that was like the rehearsal process. So we should have sort of got everything we needed, brought it to the rehearsal, to the edit, and then sort of start to play around with it. And it was very sort of free in what we did. So I really enjoyed sort of just, we had the script, we knew we had these fantastic performances. I'm not, you know, slagging you off, but they were really fantastic. And they you know, then we could really sort of test it, because what we had got was so good. So that was the sort of most enjoyable part, I would say, you know, because the shoot is a nightmare, a complete nightmare, because you have absolutely no time to even think what you're doing. I mean, it was all about preparation, then just chaos. I mean, in my head, the set was very calm.
Where is this coming from? I've never heard this.
I'm being honest. I'm being asked a very honest question.
From the performer's point of view, what was your experience of this? Did you feel turning this around?
I thought it was great, but go on, Nate.
You know what? It was very quick. It was quick. What did we have, like 24? Yeah, like no time. And I think what really helped, I mean, for me, my background's theatre, and this was my first film, so the fact that Will was in theatre, I feel like we had a little understanding, and there was rehearsals, and there was going to the space, and there was filling that with, you know, all the acting stuff and acting stuff. That works. And yeah, it was quick, so it was quite intense. I wouldn't call it a nightmare, Will, but for you, no, because yeah, fair enough. Like, he's got a lot of responsibility. I just had to think about one character, but yeah, and the cat, but yeah.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in hearing about, for you guys, what that actual filming performance element was like.
I tell you what, and I think I can vouch for both of our... Doing something like like sex scenes or any intimate scenes are really difficult unless you have someone who is going to meet you at that same mark. If you have someone who is nervous, or you have a director who doesn't really know how to tell you to take your robe off, it's very, very difficult, because you're working with bodies and you're working with sex, and it's like, who do I hurt here? But no one. And I suppose the bit that I'm really appreciative of is, for example, that rehearsal period, because we got to create these relationships and we had time to trust one another. So when it came to filming, all we had to do was just make it work. We just had to put all the paint on the canvas and just swirl it around a bit and see what we came out with. And doing those types of scenes, even including, you know, the murder scene of Teddy at the end, incredibly difficult. And we have to work with a 7-year-old, which was also very hard. And without that rehearsal period beforehand, without all of those moments that we had to learn from one another, from working with one another, then it wouldn't have been so easy on the day. And I think that helped with the short shooting period as well, because it meant that we had no faff, you know, we just got on and did it. So yeah, it was very quick. It was 4 weeks. It wasn't a nightmare. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, anybody who does any sort of Ibsen production in the UK tends to go to like the sort of catalogue book of William Hammershoy, who is like the Danish artist from that period, and so of course I turned to that book straight away, and it was like, it's just very interesting. The women in those paintings never face the viewer. They are always facing either out of a window or they are isolated. They stand on their own, wearing a black dress, away, with their turned away. And the rooms are very sort of claustrophobic. Even though they're light, they're very claustrophobic. So it felt like that was quite useful. I just thought it sort of defined our aesthetic in a way, because we thought, usually if you go Victorian period, you sort of go dark and stuffy and wooden and like heavy drapes and so on. And actually we thought, let's go lighter, and we would go, because we're going to the north, we know that there's a different sort of northern European light and so on, and so we thought maybe we could create something which just felt very austere and stuffy, even though it's sort of quite bright. And then also try and bring in, so you know, for example, Catherine sitting by the window and looking out of the window is, you know, directly from Hammershoy, really. It's like, you know, Hammershoy was quite inspired by Vermeer, so there was sort of, you could probably see those sorts of things. But into that, you know, when we started working with various people like Jacqueline, who's not here, unfortunately, she's in Athens, but she's our production designer. She started bringing all these pictures of like women scratching each other and biting each other, and like, it's like quite weird pictures. But it was like, but yeah, you know, and okay, and so that sort of found a way into that, and I felt like that as a sort of contrast was like the sort of sucking and biting and scratching and bleeding with this sort of formal austerity felt like quite a happy place to be in, you know. So.
I think it's really hard. I think I always really, it's like the question, like, you know, where did the idea come from or something? It's so deep-rooted that it's really hard to identify. And I think, I mean, this is cheesy, but I think this is one of the most, and my background is completely in theatre, and this is one of the most genuinely collaborative relationships from start to finish. And I can't remember pre-Florence. You know, like when I think of, how was I thinking of it? It's Florence in my head now, and Naomi and Cosmo, and all of the images and all of the lighting and stuff. And so it's, I mean, I know that I thought of the landscape a lot when I was writing it, and you know, there's beautiful kind of moors but yeah, it feels very close to how I had pictured it when I was writing it, which is obviously, you know, a brilliant experience. But yeah.
The shoot wasn't a nightmare, by the way. I want to say on record, the shoot was not a nightmare. I just was panicking inside, but I was trying to remain cool. But thanks to Fodhla, you know, she produced an amazingly calm and brilliant set. It was not a nightmare. And we shot in order, which is, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. We should go. Anyway, right. See you in the pub. Thank you.